Hey, my name's Jason Nicholson. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you want to buy a house and you want to borrow more money, well, a major lender has absolutely relaxed the rules on their lending. And in fact, you could maybe be in line to borrow an additional £130,000 that you couldn't borrow last week. Now, this comes after the government has pushed the Financial Conduct Authority to relax lending criteria and to push that onto lenders to get the market moving again. In this video, I'm going to talk about my suspicions on exactly why that might be, how much extra you could borrow, what the lender is, and give you some figures on exactly how this breaks down. Now, if you're new around here and you haven't done already, do make sure you subscribe to the channel over there and hit that bell notification. We're on the way to 46,000 subscribers. And by subscribing, you'll get all the latest house price news, interest rate news, property investing news, and much, much more. And I'd like to ask you a quick favour. Let's get more people aware exactly what is going on in the market. Your part in this is simple. Smash the like button, tickle the like button, do something to the like button. That helps with the YouTube algorithm, and that really has helped the channel grow. So, what's going on? Well, the government had pushed the Financial Conduct Authority to relax lending rules. Now, you may recall 2008, and that was an absolute disaster for the economy for a very, very long time. In fact, it was a global problem. Banks melted down, lots of banks went bankrupt, and that was because prior to that, to get a mortgage was quite easy. It was not really checked, your background. You could get something called a self-cert mortgage back then, where you could say how much that you borrowed, how much you earned, sorry. No one really checked into that, so people inflated their incomes to be able to borrow more money. You could also get 100% mortgages back then, which have just made a comeback. There's a company called April Mortgages that have 100% mortgage. And so all of this led to people over borrowing, not understanding how much they really could afford, and ultimately we had the financial crisis. Now, because of that, a few years later, the regulators made it really hard to get a mortgage, and today, as it stands, it's quite tough to get a mortgage. You could be paying your rent on time, you could be affording all your bills, you could be earning a good salary, but still, there are some people that just can't get a mortgage at the moment. So the government said, look, we need to do something about this. We need to make it a little easier. Let's not go back to 2008 levels where anyone can get a mortgage, but let's help some people. Let's help people that can pay their rent on time. Let's just say, for argument's sake, you could afford £1,200 in rent, then surely that means you should be able to afford £800 on a mortgage. And that's something that's being considered here as well. So the Financial Conduct Authority has been pushing banks and making the regulation less so banks can lend more money. Now, you'll still go through a process of affordability. You still will have check for CCJs and all of this stuff, but you could potentially borrow a lot more money. And Santander have jumped on this, and they are allowing people to really stretch themselves here. Now, I want to know if you think this is good or bad in the comments as we go through this. And so Santander, they've been in the news twice this week. I did a video yesterday on Santander. They're increasing their mortgage rates this week, and that's because the rate they borrow at, the SONIA swap rate, has gone up slightly. And so they are increasing rates. And now they're trying to get a positive news story in there about how you could borrow more money. So they're increasing what we call the mortgage cap, which is the amount of money that you can borrow. And that is going up by 24%. Huge amount. A huge amount. Now, why would this be happening? Why is the government pushing for this to happen? Well, I don't think it's a coincidence. I might be wrong. I'd like to know what you think. I don't think it's a coincidence that in the budget, the government is looking to raise taxes. Now, they promised to not raise VAT. They promised to not raise income tax. And there was one other tax that they promised not to raise as well. One tax that they didn't promise, though, was inheritance tax. And so if house prices go up, estate values go up, more people will come eligible to pay inheritance tax once they pass away and put that money across to their children or other beneficiaries. And so if house prices go up, then the government is going to collect more money. They're also going to put more percentage of the inheritance tax. So they're going to have a win-win here. And so I think that it's in the government's interest to keep house prices level, or at least increase them slightly as well. This also makes sense for stamp duty. Stamp duty is a very restrictive tax, in my opinion. I think it slows the market down. But the stamp duty rate increased, didn't it, recently? And so the market has slowed down from that, but there are still transactions happening. If house prices go up, they're going to generate more income through stamp duty as well. Maybe I'm cynical. Let me know what you think about that in the comment. But what they're saying here is that you could borrow £130,000 extra to buy a property. Now, this is on 25-year mortgages, and this would be on people that have either £80,000 as a deposit. Don't shoot me, there's more. Deposit or equity. Now, I know there's not going to be lots of people with £80,000 deposits, but there is going to be lots of people, especially in the southeast, that have £80,000 in equity if they already own a property. So they've given some figures. Let's have a look at the figures and see how this stacks up and how much extra you can borrow. So this is based off two people, one earning 75k and one earning 50k. This is their example, not mine. Now, previously, last week, how much could you borrow on these two combined salaries of 125 grand? You would have been able to borrow 556k. Not insignificant, and that could buy your property in the southeast. So that isn't insignificant. But look how much this changes. You now can borrow 687 grand. 687 grand. That puts a lot more people into a 4-bed property. Maybe they were looking at a 3-bed property. Now they could be interested in a 4-bed property. And that's where the market has slowed down. Maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe it's not. But this does really give people more opportunity. Now, is this good or is this bad? Well, I have two mindsets on that. It's really got to be identified about that particular person. For some people, I think this is very good because maybe they don't have lots of debts, they don't have car payments, they don't go on big holidays, but they could afford a nice house. They want a nice house to live in and spend their time in. But on the flip side, you could also get somebody that's got this great big mortgage and they've got car payments, they've got credit cards, they spend in restaurants all the time, but maybe they slowed a lot of that stuff down just before their application and then they start it again after that. Maybe it's not so good for those people. So it's good if you understand what you're getting into and your job is secure, because 75 grand jobs, while they were secure, with the fact that we've got things like AI, potentially a recession coming in, you really got to know what you're getting into, in my opinion. Now, this potentially could move the market. I do think that it could move the middle of the market, or at least keep it fairly strong. I think this is going to bring some new buyers into the market. That's what they're hoping, as well as people that sat out on the sidelines, that could afford, that want to buy a property, that just quite weren't there, but this could bring them into the market. And if you're selling your house, this could be very good for you because you suddenly could get a load more people inquiring about your property. I think the biggest thing with this is awareness. Are people aware of this happening? Which is why I said like this video so it shows up for more people on YouTube, and maybe share it. Maybe share it, and maybe if you agree or disagree that this is a good thing, still share it with friends and family and see what they think about this as well. Also, one last thing before you go, if you haven't grabbed our new ebook, Mortgage Secrets, How to Get the Best Mortgage Deal in 2025 and Beyond, this is the perfect time to do that. Grab it in the description, grab it in the first comment down below. Also, check out all the other content as well on the channel, including this video right here.